Good afternoon from Tokyo. My name is Agnes. I'm the Deputy Head of the Capacity Building Department of the Asian Development Bank Institute, ADBI, the think tank of the Asian Development Bank. Welcome to this webinar titled Genderless Lens Investing, What, How, and Why. In 1 hour, this webinar, organized with the Asian Development Bank and 2X Global, is meant to raise awareness on the potential of gender-lens investing for investors, for women, for economic growth, and for sustainable development. With this knowledge product, we hope to improve general understanding of the gender-lens investing. What is it concretely? We hope to recommend solutions useful for policymakers, private corporates, and investors to support gender lens investing. And we hope to highlight potential impact of gender lens investing in terms of financial, economic, and social benefits. We believe this topic is very important while development challenges remain huge and public resources are scarce. And it is critical to use all available resources, including private finance, to support the achievement of development outcomes. Gender lens investing is defined as the integration of gender analysis and considerations into investment decisions for better social and financial outcomes. Through this approach, the global financial architecture has the potential to advance Sustainable Development Goals 5 on gender equality, addressing gender disparities, and favoring women's empowerment, but it can also improve the well-being of all. It is a smart investment from a financial, economic, and social point of view, not only for women, but for the whole society. Gender lens investing as an investment strategy is growing globally, showing increasing awareness of the potential of finance to promote gender equality and generate more economic and social benefits. In Asia and the Pacific, this approach is still in its early stages. However, its rapid development is particularly promising. Now let's go deeper into this topic, and to continue to set the scene, I'm very happy to welcome Amanda Satterly, Principal Social Development Specialist at the Asian Development Bank. Today, Amanda will further explain what is gender lens investing concretely. Amanda, thank you for being with us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Agnes. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you all. Please go ahead and share the slides. So as they come up on screen, as mentioned, what I'm going to be chatting about today is the what component of what, how, and why. So we're going to just dive right in. So if we could go to the next slide, where I have some nice photographs to give a bit of a flavor. And the definition has already been shared with you. I'm going to not link here over the definition, but instead take you through some practical examples. But I think it's good to sort of look at a definition. It's an approach to investing, basically. How can we make sure that as we do the investing process, we're thinking about gender and how we can advance it? Next slide, please. So as Agnes already mentioned briefly, the reason we do this is it actually just makes economic sense. It's also the right thing to do in terms of giving women equal opportunities with men. But the main reason that we like to, and the main reason that we share with our clients in ADB is to really speak to them about the economic benefits, both at the sort of global economy, but also at the country and also for the company itself. We know that women just simply don't have access to the same business opportunities and financing due to biases, due to culture, due to the fact that often products and services are designed with men in mind. And so what we have is statistics like 4.5 trillion per annum could be added in GDP in Asia Pacific region if women did have that same access as men. we know from studies that companies that have gender diverse strategies or gender inclusive, and this means, and when we say gender, it just means, you know, making sure that women have equal opportunity to be employees, to be leaders, to have access to the products and services that the company provides, to be in the supply chain. We know that companies that are consciously making sure that women have equal or have improved access and opportunities, they earn more simply. There's an example of a study there where it was 3.5% above what would otherwise be earned. But these sorts of studies are out there and they show consistently again and again it makes economic sense. And so you can see other statistics there. Women are a huge consumer market. They make most consumer decisions, and yet somehow they often get overlooked. And we know that it's important for businesses and societies to really, and for economies, to really be thinking about including women, particularly as we move into the, you know, the new era of digital and the importance of STEM. I'll touch on that briefly later. But it's important to be future ready, that we're already thinking about how to include women. And there's some examples there. If we could just go to the next slide, please. So here are some more concrete examples. So when we think about gender lens investing, we think about different forms of capital that reach that businesses send out or that businesses can take advantage of. So we're talking loans, we're talking equity investment. It can be grants, it can be capacity building even. It's like whenever we're thinking about how to deploy capital in its various forms, what we're saying is think about, you know, where are women-owned businesses? Are we, if we're a bank, are we making sure that we're lending to women-owned businesses? Or if I'm an agricultural producer, maybe I'm an agribusiness, are women in my supply chain and are they benefiting and are they able to have the opportunity to deliver product, commodity product that I need to process? Examples that I've shared here is less than 3% of venture capital, for example, is invested in women-founded businesses, and yet women run about 48%, or half, if you like, of businesses owned by women in ASEAN. Um, the financing gap is eye-watering. It's 1.4 to 1.7 trillion, depending on how you measure it globally, which means that we could unleash enormous economic potential if we thought about how to reach women-owned businesses with capital and other services. And as I mentioned there before, next slide, please. Thank you. So another one, and this is one that I really enjoy talking to clients about, I'm in the private sector team, is to think about all the untapped market potential. So as we're deploying capital with our clients, we ask them to think about how they could better serve female customers. The examples shown here is a really good one. There is enormous potential to think about how we could better serve women in relation to insurance and things like that. You know, tailoring products to access or to provide women and their families with health insurance that's tailored to their needs. There's an example there in the second dot point that I've talked about, shrink it and pink it. That's the frame, that's the poor example of when a male product is just made smaller and colored pink, and then they say it's ready for women's consumption. You know, a real life example of where that's actually harmful is that if you take a car, for example, a car is designed for men, and what they've found is that even right down to the safety features, is it's actually more dangerous for women to drive a car because even the safety harness and all the different safety features of the car are built around a male physique, and that women are statistically far more likely to be injured in a car accident because of the fact that cars are designed for men and not women. So it's really important as we think about products and services and when we're investing into companies that we encourage them to think about how we can make sure that we're reaching female customers both for economic reasons and for social reasons. Next slide, please. This is something I mentioned earlier. We can also think about when we deploy capital, particularly as we move into the digital age and where STEM becomes so important. We know that women are already underrepresented in STEM workforces globally. There are, of course, industries where women are overrepresented, such as healthcare, garment factory workers, and things like that. What we are really interested in is to make sure, as we talked about before, to be future ready and to be more resilient, is women need to be also present in those industries which are the future, and we need to make sure that they get that access and that we encourage through the deployment of our capital to have businesses that are willing to open their minds to building the capacity. An example we always use is internships, making sure that the internships are either targeted at women or at least equitably shared with women to address the 28%. It makes really good business sense. Companies that do have a balanced workforce are definitely tapping into that wider pool of talent, and they're more likely to design products that meet women's needs. Next slide, please. So this is going to be, even though there's a lot of detail on this slide, I'm going to go across it really quickly. So these are the steps to deploying capital, either a loan or equity, or I guess to some level even a grant. And if we just hit return again on the right-hand side, yep, perfect, thank you. It just shows you, and I won't go into the detail, but it shows you at each step of the investment process that how you would integrate a gender lens. So this is the very sort of practical, how would I go about it? And I can share with you now, because the next two slides I'm going to share are about ADB's approach. But this is effectively how Asian Development Bank on the private sector side, we do this on every deal, pretty much. I'll explain where we more emphasize and de-emphasize. So 100% of our investments at ADB, private sector side, goes through a gender lens investing process. So as I mentioned, the bit that's sort of slightly de-emphasized for us is around origination and screening. Our deal teams do consider gender when they're looking for potential deals, but they don't screen out deals that perhaps they feel don't, because they may be focusing on a different developmental impact. So it's not like every deal must deliver only gender development impact when you do gender lens investing. It just means as you're looking across all the different developmental perspectives, gender is considered. So the deal teams do think about gender as they're screening, but from there on, the gender focus becomes quite clear. So the preliminary assessment looks at gender, the concept review, we talk about gender, the due diligence, definitely we do gender. This, I'm talking from ADB's perspective now, just to give you an example. The investment committee, the criteria that they include, they want to know about what we're doing for gender actions. Is the client, what is their baseline, what the target's going to be, how are we going to support the company to take gender action. Even our legal documents include gender actions and reference the fact that clients are expected to implement and report on their gender. Even disbursement may be withheld if we don't feel that a safeguarding issue related to gender has been addressed. And lastly, our monitoring and support involves gender. So I just wanted to share that. So if we go to the next slide. So as I just mentioned, our private sector operations, we personally implement gender lens investing across our entire portfolio. 100% of our deals last year had targeted gender actions in them. And to give you an example, we are currently supporting 42.3 million female-owned small businesses through our active portfolio. Next slide, please. So this is my last slide. The other thing that we do is we not only do gender lens investing, but we support our private equity clients and often our financial institution clients for them to also do gender lens investing. So we are constantly trying to support our clients who are deploying capital themselves to bring in a gender lens. And that's where you'll hear from Priya in a minute, who's one of our private equity clients. So we have partnered so far and increasing with about 20 private equity funds and financial institutions to support them to embed gender lens investing strategies in the way that they do business in the funds that we invest in. They integrated in different parts of the investment cycle. Again, Priya will talk more about that, but we're really just trying to, no matter where they are in that, because there is a continuum, wherever they are, we move them to the next level. And there are different tools available in the market where that can support clients. We've created a gender equality scorecard to help our clients, but often people use the 2X challenge, which you'll hear more about later on in the webinar. And also a few of them have chosen to adapt their own proprietary impact tools, which, you know, any of those approaches work, whatever's sustainable and works for the business, we're more than happy to support, because it's more about the intentionality about gender lens investing and not, you know, the methodology is up to the client. And that's it from me. Thank you. Thanks, Agnes.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Indeed, gender lens investing is multidimensional as it takes into account the ownership and governance of companies, also the employment policy and the nature of services and goods provided. In your presentation, you also demonstrated that the business case for gender lens investing is here. Yeah, I think it's important. And through the example of the Asian Development Bank, we just saw that it can be very impactful in itself and in terms of support provided to female-owned small businesses through private equity funds. And this can then generate high economic and social benefits and reduce poverty. So now let me introduce our second panelist to continue the discussion. I'm delighted to welcome Tatjana Gerling, who is a sustainable investment practitioner with FMO, the Dutch Development Bank, and she's also ambassador to Japan for 2X Global. 2X Global is an organization for investors, and it developed a standard to promote genderless investing. Tatjana will explain to us how 2X approach gender lens investing and how the criteria compiled in the standard are working. And Tatjana will also present some strategies policymakers should consider and put in place to facilitate women's access to finance. Tatjana, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Many thanks, Agnes. Many thanks for having me at this, I would say, meaningful webinar. Especially it's important as I speak from Tokyo, from Japan, the country that has a very unique situation right now. It's one of the most developed countries in the world, but at the same time, it's at the place 118 on the Gender Equality Index, where the lowest is 148. It's an exciting place to see how and what the gender lens investing can bring to the economy. Speaking about my contribution to the discussion today, thanks to Amanda, we know the key points. What is actually gender lens investing and how, as a corporation, as a small business, as a practitioner, you pretty much can reflect on your business model and see how it relates to me, to my work, to my clients. I'll focus more on the angle, what it means, the gender lens investment, what it means for our, I would say, bigger economy, from the upper level of policymakers, why we're interested in gender lens investment, looking all the way down and see how we can make it happen through practical practice business decisions. If we look at my first slides, first of all, I would like to introduce 2X Global, which was mentioned a couple of times here. I would say that's a typical example of the initiative that was born as the policy response to global challenges that are facing us. In particular, we all know that the population these days is decreasing, and in particular, it's true to birth rates also decreasing. That's particularly true for both North and Southeast Asia, where in none of the countries we can see that the birth rates are above a reproduction level. It means that at the policy level, the macroeconomic situation level, the leaders of the countries definitely saw a need how we can increase players in the economic field. And since in many countries, women still are not actively participating in the professional environment, instead they often do unpaid work or only household work, that 2X Global Initiative was launched by G7 heads of states with a commitment, and Amanda referred to it as 2X Challenge. So those countries took up a challenge to put considerable amounts of money and invest them into women-driven companies. And based on it, there was a need to develop a metrics. You cannot achieve what you don't measure. And 2X Global was created as a community of development banks in particular in the beginning, since it's a policy commitment. Asia Development Bank is one of them, for example, one of the leading development banks committed to gender lens investing. And the community currently of more than 200 financial institutions and companies that implement gender lens investing and learning from each other. And that's community I represent right now. I'm also learning from my peers in different sectors, being a part of this bigger community. If we can go to the next slide, I will give you a bit of a glimpse of what figures are we talking about. We're talking about commitment, definitely already more than only heads of G7 states, of over $2 billion to be invested in female-driven companies, enterprises. Although the beginning was, of course, governmental-driven banks, because it's a big long-term policy problem. How do we resolve issues with women having their pay gaps, women not having equal access to financing? However, we saw that sector is becoming, that indicator is becoming more mainstream, and we saw private sector investors are joining the space. Why they're joining, I will be telling about it in a minute. However, here you can see that the major banks that redirect funds related to important big macroeconomic political decisions are represented in the network. If we can go to the next slide, I will tell about what was decided and how you translate political will into the language of investors, into the language of management of the companies. And here, those of you who are acquainted with environmental and social risk management or impact creation will see a lot of, I would say, commonalities. Why? Because the gender lens investing and gender indicator is one of the social either risks or impacts that you're creating. You can pretty much plug it into the metrics that you're having. First, you avoid the risk. Second, you set up the governance of the company to allow men and women have access to jobs, to decision-making, to political and economic power alike. And then you have a choice, pick up one of the criteria that would apply to your company in particular, either entrepreneurship and ownership or leadership or employment within your company, or you apply the same requirements to your suppliers, or you focus on creating products and services for women. That's what Amanda also touched upon before me. So you have a choice here that this criteria can be applied both to small, medium, and big size companies, to funds, to financial institutions. And if we go to the next slide, a bit of a glimpse, and I hope for those of you who were involved in environmental and social impact management systems will also recognize certain things, is the critical ones to start with is to have a very clear look whether your gender responsive human rights due diligence is done for your company, if you're an investee, or if your financial institutions that are using it, if you really included it into your typical environmental and social due diligence. Another element is look at your grievance mechanism in your company where workers, employees, stakeholders can bring up social issues if it's gender responsive. It means if, for example, women are comfortable raising that issues to the contact person who should deal with stakeholders within or outside of the companies. That's pretty much it, meet expectations of your target audience. More details you can find if you scan the QR code or go to the website of 2X. Pretty straightforward, I would say comparatively easy to go through it and to see how it may fit your needs. If we go on to the next slide, again, a bit of a glimpse how you assess whether you can be qualified for 2X or not, whether you as an entrepreneur or owner of the companies, that's definitely will qualify you as the 2X Global Aligned. If you create products or services, again, 2X criteria provide a guide how you identify whether what you're doing is pretty much helps women and girls to become financially independent, to raise their income. Anything related to education, access to education, as Amanda mentioned, STEM jobs, that would definitely qualify as such. Now we zoomed in how you actually identify as the company whether you meet gender lens investing criteria. But let's again zoom out and think why it is important and what policymakers can further do it in addition to creating an ecosystem and clear gender lens investment criteria that help redirect funds and create opportunities for businesses that benefit women. First of all, good, 2X created a supranational level of commitments. How can they implement it at the national level? Development of the national strategy is quite important. Every country should understand what direction it's going in terms of empowering women and doing gender lens investing, whether it's relevant for that country, how relevant it is. And that's what I meant under gender equality baseline and targets, because it will differ from country to country. And that's where benchmarking in gender equality may help. Normally, the focus can be education, health, political, and economic empowerment. These are the pretty much key indicators that will help to understand where the country is staying and what political leaders should identify. The gender lens investing, for me, as I see it and as organizations see it, it's also, in a sense, a change management in perceptions that guide our political and economic decisions. And that's why running structured awareness campaigns at the national level, clarifying that STEM professions are also for girls, they definitely shouldn't be excluded from it, making them attractive is extremely important. Providing resources here, as the speaker before me also mentioned, is critical. But given that it's a new area, government-backed funds, here we're again speaking about political decision-making power backing those decisions, is critically important to start redirecting funds in such direction as education for women, career opportunities for women. While all the steps that I mentioned are implemented, keeping collecting gender disaggregated data on, I'm just hearing myself, on whether the strategy is successful or not is absolutely crucial. And that's, I would say, are key elements that the policymakers can and should do, while the financial institutions and entrepreneurs try to implement it at their level, at the microeconomic level. That's all from my side. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Tatjana. Indeed, we have now a more detailed understanding of criteria that can be used to use a gender lens. And policymakers have a variety of instruments they can mobilize to support this agenda. So now we have a good understanding of gender lens investing and its potential. Let's dig into some concrete examples. And for that, I'm delighted to welcome Priya Malebennur, who is director on the Asia team at ADBI, which is a leading investor in healthcare companies across the world. Priya will share with us some case studies to show the positive spillover effects and social impacts of gender lens investing. Priya, thank you for being with us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you for the introduction, Agnes. Good afternoon to my fellow panelists and all the attendees. I'm happy to share our experience at ADBI in applying the gender lens to our investments. Picking up from Amanda's introduction and Tatjana's practitioner views, hope to showcase some examples. So next slide, please. So panning out a little bit, allow me to introduce who we are briefly. OrbiMed is a global investment manager with over 20 years of investing experience in the healthcare industry. Our focus is addressing unmet medical needs across sectors within healthcare and life sciences, such as biopharma, medical devices, diagnostics, hospitals, and other services. We do this by providing capital across stages and capital structures and across geographies. So OrbiMed launched its Asia Fund, a private fund to support healthcare sector development in Asia, particularly with a focus on China and India back in 2008. So we've since been operating in Asia for over 17 years now and are currently investing from our fifth fund. In 2012, we adopted a responsible investing policy to guide overall policy of our firm. Today, the latest version is available on our website, and the policy's overarching theme is that we believe that companies that act responsibly also succeed in building long-term shareholder value. Building upon this, and with the partnership, with the start of our partnership with ADB, with Fund 2 in Asia, back in 2014, our ESMS program in Asia started to take shape. ESMS stands for Environmental and Social Management Systems. This was initially guided by ADB's social and environmental protection safeguard policies. Over the years, as you can see, our partnership with ADB has helped strengthen our ESG program. Gradually, from evaluating risks and risk controls on material ESG aspects such as employee-related policies, grievance mechanisms, etc., we have started to incorporate a gender lens. We've worked closely with Amanda on these aspects over the past few years, not just for our own operations at OrbiMed, but also for our portfolio companies. We recognize the importance of this lens, especially given the sector that we operate in. Internally at OrbiMed, operating in the finance sector, we have introduced mentorship programs. For our investment staff, we've engaged with headhunters to encourage a diverse talent pool for consideration, and these measures are now reflecting on the numbers. Starting with Fund 5, all our investments undergo a gender evaluation and receive a score, in addition to the environmental and social due diligence. As you can see on the next slide, the gender evaluation scorecard built by ADB has 4 key buckets that we utilize: entrepreneurship, leadership, employment, and consumption. Across each of these buckets, there are measurable indicators. For example, in leadership, we track the percentage of women in senior management and percentage of women in board. And these are then benchmarked by subsector, such as pharmaceutical, biotech research, medical devices research, hospitals, and other relevant subsectors, as well as geography. For example, also different between manufacturing and services, the benchmarks are significantly different. This then provides a score to the company, which is then discussed with the management of the company. If there are actions that are necessary to bridge certain gaps, these are documented as action plans and agreed upon with the management. Some of the actions that we've worked with our portfolio companies, for example, are setting up policies such as a zero tolerance towards harassment or discrimination-free workplaces, maternity leave policies, as well as paternity leave provisions as well. Grievance mechanism, and as Tatjana mentioned, making them more accessible to all concerned stakeholders, including women. Whistleblower mechanisms, no retaliation, and a system to monitor it. So annually, we track each of these metrics in addition to reports on gender disaggregated hierarchy-wise information, as well as board composition. So let's move on to some examples. Here's an example of Dami and Xiaomi. This is a company that runs treatment centers for children on the autism spectrum in China. Because the company's services are so deeply connected with child development, parent caregivers' behavior, and therapy delivery, gender issues come into play at multiple levels and we recognize them as business imperatives. The origin of this company itself, the company was founded by Ms. Ying Shang, the founder. Her daughter was misdiagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. The founder then had to look for treatment options, which were all inconvenient, either too far away or the hours were not favorable. And it eventually meant for her to have to take a break from work if she were to pursue any of these options. Eventually, sensing the gap in this treatment area, Ms. Yungshong started Dami and Xiaomi. It actually refers to big rice and small rice. Basically, also amplifying the message that it is the caregiver as well as the student, as well as the child. A gender lens essentially on this company will incorporate flexible schedules, remote availability, and easy access, among other considerations. Each of these are exactly how the company started to address 2 to 3 hours of therapy per day. They also set up an app to stay connected with the parents and provide online and remote support. These centers are also located in residential neighborhoods, much like daycare centers, for easy access. Second, talent attraction. The company had to deal with shortage of trained therapists. So the company recruits women locally near the centers and trains them as therapists. And the training program as well has been pioneered by the company itself in partnership with several research institutes. They also provide constant upskilling opportunities and training for these trained therapists. Many center managers today are actually those who started off as therapists. The third angle here is the social integration. Improved child outcomes and mainstreaming to general schools actually help caregivers return to work, primarily in this case, women. So OrbiMed's value addition since our investment in 2021 was really to help the company break down the data. We looked at the data, the employee composition at various levels, starting from admin staff, support staff, therapists, managers, senior managers, directors, presidents, and so on. Initially, when we started this assessment about 4 years ago, there were twice the number of male managers than female managers. But 90% of the therapists and the support staff were women, indicating that there was a mismatch at different levels. Today, that ratio has changed. In 4 years, there are 33% more female managers than male managers in the company, more accurately sort of reflecting the talent pipeline and reflecting the data that we wanted the company to see. In recognition of all these efforts and apart from being female founded and led, the company has also managed to raise further capital, a successful financing round with Series D financing round with another impact fund called ABC World Asia. So moving on to the next example, here is another company called LifeCell. It was founded in 2004 with a cord blood banking solution. Basically, the company saw that there were a few cord blood banking providers in India, and that the probability of match for an Indian origin sort of stem cells in a global bank was less than 10%. From there on, they started to build this business. And today, the probability of match from just Lifestyle Stem Bank alone is about 97%. So clearly here as well, given that the company has now expanded to diagnostics, including non-invasive prenatal testing, newborn screening, and has added more layers to each of these, as well as biologics, tissue biologics from their research business. The women have been a core consumer, a core customer base for this company. Many of its products have very strong gender dimensions: maternal health, prenatal diagnostics, fertility, women's health, and so on. So this gives sort of like a good alignment with the products or services beneficial to women. Because women are key customers as well as decision makers in much of these aspects, Lifestyle's business case has already incorporated gender marketing, access, and customer behavior. We've also looked at their organizational composition by gender at different levels, and I worked with them at different levels to address some of the gaps, such as ensuring that they have a policy in place for no discrimination, incorporated a gender lens to their grievance process, and help them identify talent pools or work with talent providers to improve their diversity in the talent pool. These are some of the key examples that we wanted to share with you. Of course, there are some challenges, and happy to talk about the challenges. One key aspect that I wanted to stress was that we have worked with the guidance from ADB on incorporating these several gender aspects in a very gradual manner, and really building on the social and environmental protection safeguards and applying a gender lens. This has actually given several insights to us as well as our portfolio companies to have actionable outcomes and look at those outcomes in a very and has impacted in a very positive manner, both for the business itself in not only ensuring better talent attraction and retention, which is one of the key material ESG issues for the sector, but also provided newer markets where women are key consumers. So that's it from me today. Thank you very much, and I look forward to any questions.
Thank you very much, Priya, for walking us through this virtuous cycle of gender lens investing. From your presentation, we can really see the increased emphasis on the role of women is creating economic and social value. So thank you for that. We have now a few minutes left for additional discussion. So I would like to turn to Amanda. Amanda, despite these obvious benefits, gender lens investing has still some room to be further used. From your experience, what are the main obstacles to implementing gender lens investing effectively? What are those main obstacles, and how can they be overcome?
Yes, thanks, Agnes. Yeah, I think the first obstacle is understanding why, and for people to see that there is a real reason and benefit for doing it. The kinds of examples that Priya just shared are very helpful. These kinds of conversations around why should I be doing this and why should I invest the time? Because it is an investment. And so understanding that the cost-benefit trade-off is there. So just continuing peer learning is very helpful to this kind of discussion. The second thing is around the how. And this is where, this is where tools such as 2X are very useful because it's available. Anyone right now can type in 2X Global, and the methodology of how to do gender lens investing, tools, resources are online. You know, it's a membership-based organization, but it's a perfect example of where if people are really interested to go, you know, I've already understood the why, how do I now do it? I would encourage them to do, you know, to look at, there are, as mentioned previously, there's at least 17 tools when we looked at the market where people, so if people are interested, we can share afterwards the list of all the different types of tools. UN, for example, UN Women, WEPs have a tool. So there are all these different ways to enable people to have that gender perspective. We've created a tool for our clients and they use it and tailor it, but there are many other tools. And as a first go-to, you know, I would suggest 2X because it is so accessible and it is, it's an open platform, while some of the other tools and platforms are more closed.
Excellent. Yes, we will definitely have those links toward those tools on our webpage, the webpage of the webinar, to make sure those resources are accessible to all. Now turning to Tatjana, Tatjana, you highlighted that streamlining gender lens investing consideration into national financial strategy or national development plans is essential for long-term impact. Can you share with us lessons learned from Japan, for example, or any other Asia Pacific countries where governments have successfully implemented a gender lens investing strategy?
Yeah. Thanks a lot for the question. Indeed, we are now in Tokyo, and in particular, my interest is, of course, Japan as the vivid example where gender lens investing can make a change. If I look at different countries in bigger Asia, and also in particular when we are here in the Northeast Asia and Southeast Asia, it looks like all the countries right now are learning. I'm talking about policymakers and economic instruments behind them are learning how we can actually resolve bigger macroeconomic issues in our countries, which are, we don't have enough workers who economically are going to sustain our social system as we move forward, because the number of elderly people who use social benefits is higher than the number of those who are working and creating them. And there is hardly any country on the continent that has a silver bullet solution how to resolve it. What I mean is that each country is playing with different approaches, both in Asia, but we should say Europe as well, and couple Latin America as well, trying to resolve that issue, because that's a huge, huge change in how we develop as society and as countries. Regarding the solution, when we look at specifically Asia Pacific region, but again, I'm looking at it through the lens of Japan, but again, it could be applicable to other countries, in particularly in Northeast and Southeast Asia, what we see here, that over the last several decades, quite a bit was invested in female education and health. As we remember, also United Nations programs by Asia Development Bank and many other development banks invested a lot in maternal health. Still not enough, but at least it was a lot. And education of women. We have quite a sizable workforce represented by women. But unfortunately, what we see, and that's a major, I would say, lesson learned and major hurdle to take now for many governments, is how to use all these investments and bring them into economy. Because when we look at the gender equality index, we will see that many countries do well on female health, do well on female education, but all of these huge investments are eliminated as soon as females start entering the workforce. That's why you see low scores in politics and economy, where actually you capture your investments that you did in the earlier years. Why? Because the rules of the games in the countries didn't change. Especially it's true when female professionals and female as such, start going into the age when they would like to have children. And that's we have all the investments put by the governments as well as private investments needed for education and health, but a lot by public funds are all eliminated because the rules of the such that women have to leave the workforce to take care of children, especially if the children are ill. That's normally mothers who are leaving the workforce, which leads to reduction in the income per household. And that's where solutions are needed in the care economy. And that should be blended finance solution. And one of the solutions that Priya talked about, right? Solutions for autistic kids, where you can have childcare facilities and free up women to keep working, that increases household income overall in the country while creating the job. We're simply speaking about redirecting funds into the areas that will free up qualified women while creating the care jobs with other representatives. I see how many countries are going through this change, learning from each other, but unfortunately, I don't have the perfect example for you, Agnes, to give. I see also in Europe, different countries are approaching this issue and trying to work on it. Since it's beyond our region today, I won't cite it, but I would say it's time where we all learn from each other how to implement these solutions, because issues are very similar faced by the Asian countries.
Thank you, Tatjana, for sharing your views. Now, turning to Priya, gender lens investing is often seen as a dual purpose strategy. It aims to generate positive financial returns while also advancing gender equality. What advice would you give to those trying to convince investors to adopt a gender lens from the very beginning of their investment process? And because there are costs, how can the cost associated with implementing gender lens investing could be minimized or managed effectively from your perspective?
Thank you, Agnes. So one of the things, Tatjana mentioned earlier, what gets measured gets managed. Right from the beginning, I think data-led sort of approach would be very helpful. Start looking at, we started looking at just the male and female full-time employees as a starting point, just employment measures. And from there, as we gradually moved up our journey with ADB, we have now started to look at hierarchy level gender disaggregated data. And that is throwing up some of these insights that we can then utilize to start talking about material issues that have financial relevance to the company. For example, talent attraction and retention is a key issue, especially in the sector that we're operating in, where we are, highly qualified individuals, especially in the biotech areas. And the knowledge is a key sort of asset. So I think start with data and gather those insights. Be open to what those insights might actually sort of be. It might be counterintuitive from where we started off. And look at, I think one of our approaches have been that we want to ultimately we're interested in good returns, greater than market returns, right? And with that as a sort of like a milestone, what do we need to do to get there? And some of these things might actually be relevant and might accelerate our journey towards achieving that eventual goal. So it's also about looking at it as a business case, as a project, and really drawing up how it impacts. And there might be instances when some of the data or insights that that tell you that you're already doing enough or may not support certain moves. So you really have to apply it in the context of the business that you're working in. And one more point that I wanted to add from what Tatjana mentioned was there are social and cultural norms that pose constraints to a lot of the efforts that we're making to achieve certain goals with respect to gender lens investing. There are biases, there's labor market gender segregation that we cannot overlook, but I think that those aspects have to be incorporated as part of project design.
Yeah, thank you so much, Priya, for sharing your views. So it's now time to close this episode. I want to sincerely thank our panelists for sharing their knowledge as well as their experiences, so that all stakeholders, investors, private entities, and policymakers can seize the opportunities created by gender lens investing using a common framework with clear criteria. Before closing this session, let me share quickly with you my key takeaways. Gender lens investing is profitable. This is clear. Gender lens investing brings financial returns and also social and economic benefits, not only for women, but for the whole society through spillover positive effects. We mentioned several of them. And policymakers have a big role to play to sustain gender lens investing. They have a range of instruments available, such as the formulation of national strategy with a clear role for gender lens investing. Of course, they have a big responsibility in running structured awareness campaigns, as highlighted by Tatjana. They have also a leading role in setting gender equality baseline targets, require collection and use of gender disaggregated data to inform policy. And they can also have an important role in supporting finance for gender equity by setting up government-backed impact funds, for example, or issue gender-focused bonds, for example. Thank you again for joining this webinar. The recording will be uploaded to the event webpage shortly. Please also take a few moments to complete our post-event survey. You will see it now. So if you screenshot the QR code, you can get access to our post-event survey. So please take a few seconds or minutes to share your feedback with us. Have a wonderful day, and we look forward to welcoming you to our next webinar. Tomorrow, we will hold another 1-hour session on gender and care economy, how to empower women through creating new care economy sector. See you soon, and thank you again for joining us.